Have you ever heard a truth so strange, so quietly unbelievable, that it made you question everything you thought you knew about someone you loved? That's how it started for me, sitting in a dimly lit cafe in Thimphu, staring across the table at my mother as she whispered the sentence that would unravel decades of certainty. "I didn't just marry your father," she said, hands trembling slightly. "I married his brothers too." And in that moment, I felt the ground shift beneath my feet. That I'm Emily Carter, 27 years old, born in Montana but raised in the shadows of stories that never quite fit together. My mother, Linda Carter, always told me she'd come to Bhutan on a cultural exchange trip when she was 49. She said she fell in love, with the mountains first, with my father second. Simple. Clean. A tidy narrative, but nothing in her life had ever actually been tidy. Growing up, I sensed little fractures in her stories, hesitations, contradictions, moments when her eyes softened at the mention of my uncles, Dorji and Shawang, in ways that didn't match the casual nature of their supposed relationship. They visited us occasionally when I was little, two warm, soft-spoken men who treated me like I was their own. At the time, I assumed it was just a Bhutanese tradition of communal affection. Now, I'm not so sure. The cafe around us smelled of buttery Emma Datcher pastries and spiced milk tea, and the late afternoon sun filtered through the carved wooden panels, casting stripes of gold across my mother's worried face. She looked older than I remembered. Time had softened her, but something deeper weighed on her now, something she had clearly carried for years. Outside, the prayer flags fluttered in the cold wind, their faded colors whispering ancient prayers across the hills. It felt surreal, almost cinematic, being here in her past, the place she once called home. Long before she had me, I had come to Bhutan for a work trip, but when my mother insisted on joining me to revisit old memories, I sensed there was more to it. "I just never imagined it was this." She took a shaky sip of tea, avoiding my eyes. She said softly, "Before you meet your father again, there are things you need to know." "Things like what?" I asked, though a knot had already formed in my stomach. Her tone didn't sound like she was about to confess a harmless secret. It sounded like something life-altering. She inhaled deeply. "Your father, Sonam, he isn't my only husband." I blinked. Then laughed softly, thinking it was the setup to one of her eccentric stories. "Mom. What does that even mean?" "It means," she whispered, "that I was part of a polyandrous marriage. With 3 brothers. Your father, and your uncles Dorji and Shawang." My heart thudded painfully. "You married, all of them?" She nodded, eyes glistening. "And I loved them. Each of them. Differently, but completely." I sat back, unable to form a coherent thought. Everyone knew that fraternal polyandry, one woman marrying multiple brothers, was a rare but traditional practice in remote Himalayan regions. But my mother? A woman who collected hardcover books and brewed coffee like it was religion, how? I finally asked. "How did that even happen?" She steadied herself. "I met Sonam first. He was my guide during the cultural program. He had this warmth, this quiet, steady kindness, that made me feel seen in a way I hadn't in years. I remembered my father that way too. Gentle. Patient. A man who spoke in soft sentences and listened like words mattered. But he had responsibilities," she continued. "Land, family, traditions. And part of that tradition was that the brothers shared a wife, to keep the land undivided." I felt my breath hitch. "So you agreed?" "Yes. Because by then, I had fallen for the other brothers too." A strange ache flickered through me, something between fascination and betrayal. "Why didn't you tell me sooner?" She wiped a tear. "I was ashamed. Not of them, never of them. But of how the world back home would judge me. And how it all eventually fell apart." "What do you mean?" She hesitated, her voice trembling. "Your uncles wanted children. More children. And that complicated things." I swallowed. "Are you saying I might not be?" "No," she cut in quickly, reaching for my hand. "You are Sonam's. We tested, years ago. But the jealousy, the expectations, they changed us. She looked out the window as though searching the mountains for the woman she used to be. I tried to make it work, she whispered. For years. But love, it bends under pressure. And sometimes it breaks. Her confession hung heavily between us, thick as the cold air outside. Mom, I murmured, does Dad know we're here? Yes. She closed her eyes. And so do Dorji and Shawang. They want to see us both. A rush of dread and curiosity tangled in my chest. What do they want from you? Her voice cracked. Forgiveness. We met them the next evening in a quiet mountain lodge overlooking a valley dotted with tiny farmhouses. The sunset painted the sky in streaks of rose and amber, but the beauty did little to soften the tension pressing against my ribs. The brothers stood when we approached, three aging men with familiar eyes and different burdens in their expressions. Sonam stepped forward first, and when he embraced my mother, something fragile and old fluttered in the air between them. That I watched as Dorji and Shawang approached more cautiously, their eyes shifting between us with a longing that was almost painful to witness. Emily, Shawang said softly, you look just like her when she first arrived. Sonam gestured for us to sit. We have much to discuss. The air felt heavy with anticipation, like a storm waiting to burst. After a few minutes of awkward silence, Sonam cleared his throat. Linda, we wronged you. We let tradition crush what we had. We let jealousy turn us into strangers. Dorji lowered his gaze. We should have protected you better. My mother's voice was barely audible. You didn't force me into anything. I chose you. All of you. Yet you left, Shawang whispered. I had to, she said, tears forming again. I couldn't be the answer to everyone's loneliness. Then Sonam looked at me, his eyes steady but sad. Emily, you deserved to know the truth earlier. We wanted to tell you. For many years. But your mother asked us to let her explain in her own time. I nodded, unsure how to respond. The truth felt surreal, almost too cinematic to absorb. That's when Dorji took a deep breath, shoulders trembling. There's something else. The room stilled. We are dying, he whispered. All three of us. Slowly. Different illnesses. But the same truth, time is short. My mother gasped, covering her mouth. No, that can't. We didn't call you here for pity, Sonam said softly. We called you because we didn't want to leave this world with your heart still carrying the weight of what happened. My mother broke then, fully, painfully. And in that moment, I saw the depth of what she had once shared with them. A love too complex for simple judgments, and a grief she had never allowed herself to feel. That we stayed with them for the next 2 days, walking through the fields where they had once told stories under the stars, cooking meals together in the old wooden kitchen, laughing through tears as memories resurfaced like old songs. That I watched my mother soften in ways I had never seen. She wasn't the restless woman I grew up with. Here, in this valley, she was whole, painfully, beautifully whole. On the morning we left, each brother pressed a small carved wooden amulet into my mother's hand. For strength, Sonam said. For forgiveness, said Dorji. For remembrance, whispered Tshiwang. We rode back toward Thimphu, prayer flags fluttering past the windows. I took my mother's hand. Do you regret leaving? I asked quietly. She looked out at the mountains, her voice steady but heavy. No. And yes. Love doesn't always fit into the life we imagine. But that doesn't make it less real. I leaned my head against hers, feeling the soft tremble of her breath. When we reached the city, a calm settled between us, an understanding that some truths arrive late, but right on time. And as I looked back at the fading peaks, I realized something. Some stories aren't meant to be judged, only witnessed, only carried, and this, my mother's impossible, tangled, beautiful truth, was one of them.